All right, welcome back everybody. The time is here and the launch is right around the corner. What am I talking about? Obviously Hedron and Icosa. The Icosa launch is right around the corner, so if you haven't heard about what it is or what it does yet, I've already been making videos about this. I've been talking about this for a while, and some people have been listening, but a lot of people didn't really watch the last video I made about Icosa, and now it's launch time. So if you don't have any idea what it is, that's on you, but you still have 4 days left to learn about what this is and decide whether or not you want to get involved. So stick around. I'm going to go through what it is, how to get it, and what is the value prop anyway of this whole Icosa Hedron thing. How does it add to the Hex ecosystem? We're going to talk about all that. Stick around till the end. So basically, in one single sentence, Hedron staking is here. You can see right on the website. You can go to icosa.pro and read, and I highly recommend going to the Telegram too and reading the pinned messages in the Telegram channel. But it's essentially Hedron staking. So Hedron, for those that don't know, is something that's mintable only if you have a Hex stake. So it incentivizes more Hex staking, and it's kind of a derivative of Hex itself. It also allows for tradable stakes as NFTs, and also taking an advance on your stake in the form of Hedron token, if that's something you want to do. Now, what kind of happened early on was a lot of free Hedron was given to early, Hex holders, Hex OGs, and a lot of those guys have since dumped, and the price has seen a pretty significant recovery. Guys, check out the chart right here. So it's only been out for maybe 4 or 5 months now, but when Hedron was launched, it had an initial run up and then a 97% dip, but we're seeing some strong price movement to the upside on Hedron itself. And why is that? It's because, well, first of all, a lot of the whales that didn't care about it or didn't want to hold it, they already sold. And they distributed the coin among holders that bought the dip. And the people that bought the dip tend to be the ones that kind of believe more so in the project. Now, luckily for me, I kind of wasn't paying attention to this at first, so I'm still holding, but that's really just because I figured why not. But the more I dive into Icosa and the more I dive into the Hedron ecosystem and how they complement Hex and add to the speculative stickiness of Hex, the more I like it, the more it's kind of clicking for me. So it allows you to stake your Hedron to earn Icosa, and it also allows you to stake your Icosa to earn both Icosa and more Hedron. So long story short, again, watch my previous video. I'll post that one above if you want a deeper dive. And check out Crypto Sloth as well too. He's kind of an expert at this whole thing, and he's been doing interviews with a bunch of people. But what does Icosa do? Like I just said, if you stake your Hedron, you get Icosa. If you stake your Icosa, you get Icosa plus Hedron. And fun fact, guys, Icosa plus Hedron together, icosahedron, that's actually a three-dimensional hexagonal shape. It's a three-dimensional shape that forms a hexagon when laid on a two-dimensional surface. So it's like Hex, but 3D, man. Anyway, you can also cash in your HSI stakes in order to get Icosa. Again, this is a high-level bird's eye view. You can also buy what's called a We Are All the Source Address NFT. So that at the launch date, in 4 more days, remember, there's going to be NFTs for sale, and buying these is a way to establish a position in an Icosa yield pool to generate Icosa yield. That's a different way to get Icosa, different from creating an HSI stake and cashing it into the Icosa smart contract. And finally, guys, if you stake Hex in the first place, that's the only way to mint Hedron in the first place. Obviously, you can go buy it on the open market too. Clearly, a lot of people have, right, as we've been seeing in the price chart. But if you have Hex stakes, that's the only way to mint Hedron for free. And a lot of Hex holders, Hex stakers like myself, have just realized, recently that, oh my gosh, we have all these long-term stakes with all these Hex amounts. And whether or not you're old or new, this applies to everybody. It's kind of just free money. You have to pay the gas fee to mint your Hedron, obviously, but other than that, for every day that goes by in the Hedron ecosystem in your particular Hex stake, you basically multiply the days you've served in your stake times the amount of B shares that you have. And remember, 1,000 B shares equals 1 T share. We're talking about billion versus trillion. And that simple calculation dictates how much Hedron you get. So days served times B shares you have in your stake. And you can check all this out on app.icosa.pro. Link in the description below. I'll remind you guys again in a few minutes. So let's move on. Now, I'm sure a lot of you want to know, where does all the yield come from? Let's make sure this is not a Ponzi scheme. Tangent here, all this stuff is audited. The developer Alex is very well known. All this stuff is admin key free, and it abides by all the principles that people in Hex and Pulse Chain and the Richard Heart ecosystem really enjoy, right? Not your keys, not your coins. No scammy BS. I mean, we're too smart for that kind of thing. So it's been vetted and it's been deemed safe by a number of people. Obviously, nothing is without risk. Okay, so you take your responsibility for yourself, but I'm just telling you that this does abide by a lot of the principles that Hex holders have. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it. Okay. Where does the yield come from? Well, Hedron gets burned, right? Hedron essentially gets burned via all these different mechanisms, and it makes the coins more rare. Now, previously, Hedron was only being able to be burned in liquidation auctions. So, essentially, if you took a Hedron loan and you didn't pay it back and you forgot about it for 90 days, your hex stake, your wrapped hex stake would go up for auction for anybody else to buy it using Hedron that they've minted. So it'd be like a cheap way to pick up some really good hex stakes that might have had old T-share values and really good interest rates for way cheaper than market value, just by sending in your Hedron to that smart contract, and then that Hedron was burned. So that's been established previously in Hedron, but some new burn mechanisms that exist are, well, if you emergency unstake one of your HSI stakes, and guys, an HSI is simply a wrapped stake. Go watch my previous videos, go learn more, go read the white paper for all this terminology. But if you emergency unstake one of your wrapped stakes, 50% of that penalty is burnt, and the other 50% goes to Icosa stakers directly in the form of Hedron. Buying back, like I just mentioned, buying back a defaulted stake, HSI stake that's been liquidated in what's called the liquidation auctions. Remember, after not being paid back for 90 days, all that Hedron used to buy that liquidated wrapped stake is also burned. So supply is dwindling, right? There was a big supply shock in the beginning of Hedron. A lot of whales were given a 10x multiple, but the supply is getting increasingly shorter as that 10x multiple is impossible to get nowadays. You can only get a 1x, obviously. And plus there's new burn mechanisms being added there, taking supply off the table, along with some interesting dynamics in terms of the T-share rate. We'll get into that. Back to the burning. You can also burn Hedron by paying installments on your Hedron advance. This existed before, but I just want to remind you guys of it. Another way Hedron gets burnt is that when you pay off your loan, the tiny little interest payment or premium that you pay on the loan installment or repayment is burnt. And then finally, there's this thing called the proof of benevolence function, which is essentially just a burn function. And we've seen people do this, and this is really interesting. So I want to see, certain whales, for example, the source address, kind of like the origin address in hex. If this particular individual, you can go look, if he or she ran the proof of benevolence function, essentially burning their own coins, this could be kind of a symbolic gesture of good faith in the product. So this is kind of a cool concept, right? This doesn't actually exist in hex, but it's a good way to show, almost to prove, like waving a white flag saying, hey guys, I'm extending an olive branch to the community by showing you that I'm proving my benevolence by burning coins at only cost to me and only benefit to you by making your supply or your portion of the supply relatively larger. So this is how Hedron coins get more rare, okay? And all the burned coins of a particular day is what's going to generate the Icosa yield from that day. So the Icosa yield from the day is based on this equation, simply daily burned Hedron from all these burning mechanisms I listed above, divided by the daily share rate. Now, the daily burned Hedron can fluctuate up or down, but guess what? We know that in hex, the hex daily share rate ratchets up little by little every day, and it's always going up in hex terms. So what happens when the denominator of a fraction gets bigger over time? This yield function gets smaller over time, so it asymptotes. It gets very, very small after a long period of time. So it's going to start off big, meaning it's good to get in early, hypothetically, right? And as the share rate goes up and the daily burn Hedron stays, fluctuating around whatever it is, up or down, little by little, it's going to become more and more scarce. Now remember what I said earlier, that 50% of the emergency unstake penalties from wrapped stakes are burned. The other half goes directly into the yield for the Icosa staking pool. So that Hedron goes to the Icosa staking pool. And remember, when you're staking Icosa, you get more Icosa based on this function above, and you get some Hedron too based off that other half of the emergency unstake penalties. So pretty complex. I know there's a lot of moving parts. Stick with me. I'm going to explain everything. What is the value prop of all this? Why bother doing this? Well, guys, it makes hex more sticky. It adds another game, another layer of complexity for people that want it. And it adds, more functionality to hex. You can trade your stakes, you can take out an advance on your stakes, and now you could stake some of these tokens, Hedron and Icosa, which previously had kind of just been dumping due to minting, people really only using the minting function and not a lot of activity on the liquidation auctions yet, or not a lot of activity on the NFT market for selling stakes yet, right? One day there probably will be. But the value prop for Icosa is essentially it completes Hedron. That's even in the name, right? Icosahedron. So It generates more hex staking. This is first and foremost, right? Because remember, the only way to mint more Hedron is to stake your hex. And when you stake your hex, guess what? You have to buy hex first. That means hex buy pressure. And I don't think a lot of people realize this. When you stake your hex, not only is it increased hex buy pressure, but it's decreased sell pressure, right? And it seems very simple to say that out loud, but it's actually very important. This is how hex works and goes up in value over time. So you're buying the price up, and then you're taking coins off the table, you're launching them into the future, and you're vowing not to sell them. So those coins are unsellable for any number of years. And so more hex staking will be done because more people are going to speculate on Hedron, and that's really the only way to get Hedron for free. Other than buying it on the open market, that's not free, but you can mint Hedron for free if you have a hex stake. Alright, the next point is that Icosa is actually rare. So it starts off at zero, literally zero supply, and it asymptotes up as the share rate goes up. So there's scarcity to Icosa. Icosa is only generated by Hedron being burned. And remember that equation, inflation rate of Icosa is the total Hedron burned for the day divided by the share rate, meaning because the share rate's always going up in hex terms, the Icosa yield will always get smaller and smaller, but it will be highest in the first couple of months here. So you might want to pay attention. So Icosa is scarce, and it actually makes Hedron more rare by increasing all those incentives for burning that I just talked about. Those 4 different incentives to burn Hedron reduce the supply. Whether or not, regardless of demand, supply is being reduced. So scarcity for Hedron too, on top of scarcity for Icosa. There's also incentives to hold both Hedron and Icosa through staking. Staking is a proven narrative meme that works, right? It gets people to hold it because they want yield. And we live in a world where everyone's seeking yield. These are 2 more ways to get trustless yield on these 2 new coins. So you can stake your Hedron and you can stake your Icosa, 1 stake per wallet per coin, right? You can do 1 Hedron stake and 1 Icosa stake per wallet. And you can add to that as much as you want. Again, watch my old videos, but this decreases sell pressure because people are vowing to stake and not touch their coins and not sell their coins because instead they want to earn rewards and also passive income. It also creates a tradable stake/bond market. This already exists today. It's called hexmarket.com, but this bond market might pick up in popularity as some of these wrapped stakes get closer and closer to their end date, to expiry. But you basically have a derivative market where people can swap and trade stakes back and forth. This all just adds to the speculative stickiness. Finally, what I want to talk about is that there is a new app, a unified front end called app.icosa.pro. It's a unified front end for all 3 of these coins. I actually think it's a great new feature, and it's probably where I'm going to be doing a lot of my end staking. You know what I mean? So instead of go.hex.com, it's just a different front end. So it interacts with not only the hex contract, so you can obviously still stake your hex, unstake your hex, your native stakes, right? Not your wrap stakes, but also you can manage all your wrapped stakes, your wrapped NFT stakes that are tradable. You can do all your Hedron minting. You can do all your Hedron staking, all your Icosa staking, and everything is all just really nice in this nice, neat front end where we can do Hedron, Icosa, and Hex. So look here, guys. This would be like your native stakes. You could create new stakes. You can manage all your stakes right here. It'll probably look very similar to go.hex.com, and then you can also mint all of them at once with this mint all button. On the Hedron side, you can manage all your wrapped stakes. You can create new wrapped stakes and again, mint all your Hedron for those wrapped stakes. And then you can manage your tokenized NFT wrapped stakes and see, where they're traded on and manage them all right there. And finally for Icosa. Icosa is only on the testnet right now, so I'm connected to the Pulse Chain testnet. Remember, 4 days from now, it's going to be live on Ethereum. You got Icosa staking, Hedron staking. You can choose how much you want for each. Stake points are pretty much just like shares, essentially. And your minimum days in the stake, your maximum days remaining, your accumulated yield in both Icosa and Hedron versus in Hedron staking, you only get Icosa. You've got the We Are All source address bonus. We're going to talk about this in a minute. And the HSI buyback program, which is where you can send in those HSIs as a strategy and to get Icosa early on in the game because you're going to get paid Icosa for cashing in your HSI stake. So again, the value prop for all this is more speculative stickiness, more opportunities for passive income, and it's really great. They all complement each other. Again, you can't have Hedron without Hex, and you can't have Icosa without Hedron, and it's really just kind of a trifecta of coins, in my opinion. Now, there might be more that I'm missing in terms of the value prop. Obviously, you have liquidity plays that can be made. You've got some market utility in terms of people might want to try trading Hex for Hedron or Hedron for Hex for Icosa. There might be arbitrage opportunities available, but if you can think of more to this value prop, let me know in the comments below. I'm actually curious. Now, here's why you're all here. Well, how do you get Icosa in the first place? Okay, there's 4 ways. 1, buy Hex on Uniswap or decentralized exchange. Now, I am personally probably not going to be going this route because I can't guarantee that there's going to be any liquidity on Uniswap in the first couple of months when it comes to Icosa, right? People actually have to put up the liquidity, and it's probably going to be thin at first because it's a new coin. So you might not get the best prices on a decentralized exchange, or you might not be able to even buy much in the first place. Like if you want to buy $1,000, I don't even know if there's going to be $1,000 of liquidity in the first, couple of days or weeks. Now, this is something I'm interested in. Number 2 is you make an HSI stake, and I actually just personally did this. I made a 5,555-day stake, and you can send it right back to the Icosa contract in exchange for Icosa after that 90-day period. Remember that liquidation period. I like this mechanism because if you make a max link stake, you actually get a 10% bonus, right? And so I want that 10% bonus, so I made a max link stake. I wish I had made a wrap stake early on, back when there was a 10x multiplier. Now I'm only getting a 1x multiplier, but hey, I'm still getting a 10% bonus. But if the people that do have that 10x multiplier get an additional 10% bonus, so that's 10% on top of 10%. So what is that, like 22% or something like that? So I can see a lot of people doing this route, right? Choosing to buy a max link stake. However big or small it is, it's going to be based on the total mintable hedron in that stake. So obviously if you make a bigger Hex stake, you'll get more Icosa for that. And this seems like kind of the ideal way in the early days for me to get Icosa. Number 3, you can simply buy hedron and stake it. Now I'm probably also going to be doing this mechanism because at this point, I've got all this hedron I'm sitting on. I haven't touched it. I want to see where this thing ends up. So I'm probably going to stake a pretty big portion of my hedron because I'm not going to really touch it anyway. Might as well earn some Icosa for that too. So the number 2 and 3 are going to be probably the most popular methods in my opinion. Number 4, obviously you can buy Icosa and stake it, right? This is only if liquidity exists, going back to number 1. But remember, staking Icosa gets you more Icosa. So once you have some Icosa, you can stake that and get even more. Okay, so these 4 ways are how you get it. Now, I have no idea what the price is going to be on an asset that's perceived to be scarce. Again, starting at 0 supply, the price chart might look very interesting. And of course, it's going to be very volatile in the early days. And now there's some strategic options. There's different ways you could play this thing, right? You can simply buy and mint hedron and stake it. If you don't have hedron, you'll have to buy it, but you can stake it and mint some Icosa. I like this strategy. Seems pretty safe. Just minting your hedron, again, by either buying it on the open market or by making a Hex stake. And this is going to incentivize more staking too, because if you want free hedron, you might as well make a Hex stake. I think I'm super bullish on Hex anyway, so it seems like a good idea to me personally, and then get that free token from it every day by minting. Another option you could do in terms of the strategy is you can buy Icosa on Uniswap. Again, this might be hard, might not be possible early on. Another option is you can start an HSI and sell it back to the Icosa contract. I'm choosing to do this as well. I think this is going to be a good option for me personally. You don't have to do any of this stuff, guys. You don't even have to touch this coin if you don't want to. Make your own decisions, okay? Finally, you can buy, I want to talk about this one. It's called a We Are All the Source Address NFT. So in We Are All the Source Address, guys, there's going to be this early opportunity to buy an NFT using USDC, Hex, or possibly a couple of other coins as an option to get in early on this NFT and enter yet another Icosa yield pool. So it's kind of like the original Icosa staking pool that's for everybody, but there's basically a duplicate of that staking pool for only this special group of NFT holders. Now, the thing about this NFT, which is pretty cool, is that it's automatically locked in and it's automatically as if you were staked the moment that you get this NFT, as I understand it, right? And it's essentially a game of last man standing. So you can end your We Are All Satoshi NFT stake anytime you want, but then you'll never be able to restake it ever again. So you can end the NFT stake whenever you want, but you'll never be entitled to that new revenue stream of Icosa staking rewards, okay, or Icosa yield. So I want to be one of the last guys in there. So there might be a couple hundred people at first, for example, but after a year, 2 years, as people start ending their stakes, taking their rewards, cashing out and leaving, well, that means more and more rewards for you, who was able to delay gratification longest. So pretty cool game theory there, pretty cool mini game that I'm going to experiment with personally. And you can choose to or not. I really don't care. Finally, there's some liquidity plays to be made if you are a really smart guy, or if you think you are. You can make some liquidity moves with the Hex Hedron pair or the Hedron Icosa pair, Hex Icosa pair. These all seem like interesting strategies or strategic options. So you can do any one of these 5, or of course the other option is don't do anything at all. Don't even buy this thing. And just stay away and stake your Hex and forget about it. So that's all I have for today, guys. What are you going to do? How are you going to handle this launch in 4 days? It's pretty interesting to me. It's pretty sticky. Let me know in the comments below. Obviously, like, subscribe, share the video. Courses are in the description below if you're brand new to crypto. And we've got merch as well. So thanks, and I'll see you on the next video.